Hello, and welcome to the Skapa Podcast, Creating the Future. The Skapa Podcast is all about imagining the future as we would like to create it, and then turning those big and bold ideas into reality. And we're joined by a very special guest here today, Larsen Jensen. And Larsen is an Olympic medalist 2 times in the 2004, 2008. He's also a former Navy SEAL, and now the general managing partner of Harpoon Ventures. He's also the founder of Harpoon Ventures. Welcome to the podcast, Larsen.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and so...
and San Diego resident here, so happy to be down here where you guys are co-located in this fine city where we can help make a difference for the warfighter.
Yeah, I see Larsen bopping around town in
all the time.
So we're neighbors over there. Often run into you at the baseball park and whatnot. So it's really good to have you sort of in our house over at the Skapa headquarters.
My pleasure.
Hey, Larsen, can you walk us through sort of your life and how you arrived at Harpoon Ventures, the path? And it's a very interesting sort of personal history, and I'm sure our viewers would love to hear it.
I appreciate that, Michael. And it's definitely a meandering path, and it's something I never would have forecasted in my younger years growing up on an almond farm in Bakersfield, California. But here we are, down here in sunny San Diego. And for us now, as you mentioned, I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Harpoon Ventures, an early stage dual use and defense tech venture capital firm. We invest specifically in companies that we think have the opportunity to make a difference for not only the warfighter, but for our country. I think we're at a crucible moment in world history. And in my view, this current moment is going to be more consequential than the Manhattan Project and the space race of the 60s and 70s combined, cut across every single domain of capability and across every single industry. When we're thinking about AI, energy, how that impacts our warfighting capability as a country, how that impacts our national sovereignty, I think all of those things are more connected now more than ever. By virtue of how we got here, I shared that I grew up in the Central Valley of California, had a very rural upbringing, but one I'm very proud of. My parents were almond farmers, and that gave me the opportunity to pursue a career inside of the swimming pool. It's very hot in the summertime up in Bakersfield, California. And so a nice outlet for that is to get in the backyard pool. I took that opportunity to not only swim in my age group swim team in the outskirts of Bakersfield in Shafter, California, but also to swim in Bakersfield and then move my way down to Southern California to swim for the Mission Viejo Nadadors. That's really where I got my, talent and passion for swimming. And that brought me to USC, where I swam there and was lucky to swim with some of the best in the sport at that point in time, and to compete on a world stage and represent our country, most importantly, in the 2004 Athens Olympics and the 2008 Beijing Olympics, which was just a wild ride and a fantastic experience.
And so 2004, which medal did you win?
I earned a silver medal in 2004. So I swam then against the folks like Grant Hackett and Ian Thorpe from Australia, who were a really big deal at the time. And an interesting byproduct of that is the Australian swimmers are effectively like our NBA stars in Australia. They're very popular. They're in the tabloids. They're in the media all the time for the right and wrong reasons. And so that was a remarkable experience. So I was probably more popular in Australia as the villain than I was popular in the United States, because there's only so popular swimmers in the United States can be outside of Phelps and folks like that. Yeah. So I got a silver medal behind Grant Hackett in 2004. I got 4th in the 400 meter freestyle in 2004 as well, which was just a remarkable experience, especially when you bring it back to the birthplace of the modern Olympics, Athens, Greece. And so us as athletes, we're not only donned our medals, but the wreath of the olive branch wreath that we'd wear on our heads, just like the original Olympians were given.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. And then 2008.
Yeah.
How was your competition?
Who would have thought it'd be as topical as it is today? Where Beijing 2008 was viewed at the time as sort of the coming out party of China on a world stage to show that they're back and mean business in a variety of different ways. At the time, I had no appreciation for that, other than the sheer amount of money that they put into putting on the games, which are tremendously successful, I think, by any metric, and especially from an athlete's perspective. That's where Michael Phelps won his 8 gold medals in the water cube. I got a bronze medal there. So I guess I did worse by 1 place in the 2008 Olympics. I got 2nd and 4th, and in 2008, I got 3rd and 5th in the Olympic Games there.
And what's that like competing on that level in the pool, which you just sort of started as a child?
It's hard to put into words, but I think it's probably no different than competing in any other domain. I just think that the stakes are a little bit elevated, but for a competitive athlete, it's really no different probably from our kids playing, in championship baseball. To them, that's the Olympics, right? And so I think as you work your way up in life, in sports and in business, it's not like there's necessarily more internal pressure, in my opinion. It's more business as usual, but you just moved yourself up in terms of the playing field and the stage that you're operating within.
It seems like a very, I know you're part of a larger team, but it seems like a very intensely mental sport. I mean, it's just you and this black line, and then, I mean, you're by yourself in the water.
Totally agree. And you must have some swimming background in your family. It is. I think it's a very arduous sport. I'm obviously biased because that's the sport I used to do, but it is one of the few sports where you're literally alone with your thoughts and nothing else. You don't really have much external stimulation. Unlike a bike ride or maybe a jog or a run, you can't talk to a friend. The scenery doesn't change. You're literally following the same thing over and over and over. It can be hypnotic and painful at the same time. And for me, I feel very fortunate that I found swimming at a young age, because more importantly than anything that it taught me was the direct correlation between hard work in and positive results out. There's obviously diminishing returns in anything you do. You can always overdo anything. But even at a young age, it was pretty linear for me. The more practices I showed up to, the harder I worked at those practices. I'd even go outside of our prescriptive practices and try to do extra, because I saw my times drop very concretely as the season went through. The harder I worked and the more I trained and the more I focused on my technique. And I think that skill set is something that very few people have the opportunity to learn, especially at a young age. And now even with our own kids, it's hard to measure that hard work. I mean, how many at-bats do you need to like truly feel and observe that you're getting better behind the plate as a baseball player? I don't have the answer to that. I was never really a good baseball player, but I think probably many more than I need swim races to see if I drop time. And I could recognize like in a swim race itself, like, oh, that felt faster. I went faster. And that helped me to understand sort of, I think, the causal effect of the raw inputs to doing things well in life, whether that be in the military, in swimming, in sport broadly, or even in business. Having that long-term horizon now as a technology investor, it's almost like waiting 4 years for an Olympics all over again. As an early stage investor, we invest in seed stage companies or companies that are just getting started that are an idea. You need years of gestation and hard work to actually have the opportunity to win at a larger scale. It's very similar to having the perspective of an Olympian, in my opinion, where, sure, there's mid-season meets and maybe some consequential nationals and things of that nature, but you need years to go by before you actually can, understand if you actually did what you were training for.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm feeling that as I transitioned out of the military into the private sector, it doesn't happen as fast as you would like it. So 2008, you finish your Olympic career, and then you decide something crazy, right? What was the decision point there?
At the time, a lot of people thought it was crazy, but I joined the military with the goal of becoming a United States Navy SEAL. And there's lots of stories and backstory to that. And a lot of factors went into that decision. At the time, who would have thought we'd be only, not even a third of the way through GWOT at that point, is effectively a 20 plus year conflict. That I'm not sure is actually still resolved to this day. There's still challenges around the world from a national security standpoint with extremist organizations and terrorist organizations. But I felt, coming from where I came from in Bakersfield, California, that I was very fortunate to represent our country on a global scale and to represent our country against other countries around the world, and to wear Team USA not only on my jersey, but on my cap and my suit. It was just an honor that's hard to compare to anything else. But if I was going to further that commitment to our country, that I should do more than provide lip service, I should sign up and serve, and I should do so in uniform. And if I had the ability to have the physical and mental and emotional toughness to serve with the best, that's what I wanted to do. So I went into the Los Angeles recruiting depot to volunteer for service. And it was funny. I went, for everybody that's been in the service, everyone has their own story about what it's like to go through that process. And the recruiter said, all right, nice to meet you, son. Fill out this list of your top 5-10 billets of what you want to do in the Navy. We got a lot of great work that, the Navy needs done. And I wrote United States Navy SEAL for the entire list. And of course, the recruiter, being the fine gentleman that he was, said, son, that's not how this works. You need to pick other specialties. You go into aviation, you go surface warfare, you go subsea, you can do all these things. And I said, this is all I want to do. In hindsight, I think that should probably be a prerequisite for the special operations community, almost like a trick in terms of what it takes to sort of get in there, is that non-hedging. But that's what I filled out, and then worked hand in glove with my recruiter to get my PST scores to where they needed to be competitive and get all my records put together and the recommendations. And I got a phone call literally on April Fool's Day, for the 1st of April. I forget, what was it? It must have been 2009, to report like the following week for officer candidate school. Wow. And of course, I thought that it was just a buddy playing a trick on me on April Fool's Day. But turns out that's how the Navy works. Like, you get a phone call and say, show up in a week. And I didn't have, I had to break my lease, had to pack everything up. Obviously the Navy provides conditions for that as well. And a week later, I was in Newport, Rhode Island.
And then you became an officer, and then you went down to Buds here in Coronado and joined the teams.
Yes.
So how would you characterize your 6 years in the U.S. Navy on the team?
I loved it, and I look back on it with the fondest of memories. I think fortunately I found a new career in the private sector, similar to what you're doing here, where I'm still deeply involved with the community I care so much about. My best friends in the world were the groomsmen in my wedding, and the friends that I'm the closest with now are my former teammates that I went through Buds with, or that I actually served with. And fortunately, many of them are still here in this region. So very happy to have that close relationship. And I think it's probably, as with anything in life, you have your closest relationships with the people that you went through adversity with, and you have unique stories to go through with. For those that you don't have those shared experiences and sometimes misery, especially in the form of training. They're great stories after the fact, but during the moment, they don't feel so pleasant. But those are the things that we tend to reminisce with the most.
I'm willing to bet you caught your fair share of.
I got my fair share of grief. I tried to keep my head down and have nobody know. But people are smart and better connected than you'd ever assume. And so I got found out in about 30 seconds.
No, so one would think just the skill sets, transfer. And you'd probably think that the physical skill set is the most important, but actually it's probably that mentality that you were talking about earlier that made you successful as a SEAL.
I totally agree with that comment. I think a lot of people from an outsider's perspective would assume, hey, Olympic swimmer must have had no problem in Buds. Yeah. Swimming is a fraction of what you do in Buds and in the SEAL teams. You need to be very capable in the water. Mm-hmm. The water can take your life in an instant. It's probably the harshest environment that you could have. Especially, in the open ocean. But frankly, you have a 2-mile time swim every week. That's part of it. You have drown proofing and things of that nature. And so I think for anybody that competed in swimming at a high school to college level, it's relatively straightforward. I really struggled for the ground-based things where you're carrying heavy rucks around, carrying boats on heads, heavy logs and things of that nature. I went from being virtually a zero gravity athlete to a maximum gravity athlete, if you will. And so I think that was probably the hardest thing for me. But the commonality, more than anything, was having some very demanding coaches of me throughout my entire swimming career. The people that would never let me, take an inch off of something. It really pushed me to be the best I could. And for somebody that doesn't live in that high pressure environment, or having coaches, whether it be football, baseball, whatever, that are on you nonstop. It's like having a Buds instructor that's on you nonstop. But they're not doing it out of a position of, hate or dislike for you. They're doing it out of a position of love and caring for you and for the community that you're about to join. And so for me, I think it was actually, it's never easy and it's definitely hard. But to have that perspective that my hardest coaches, the coaches that were the hardest on me, actually the ones that cared the most about me and the team. And the same thing could be said, I think, for the Buds instructors and the SEAL teammates. The ones that are the hardest on you are the ones, the highest bar and the highest standard for you, out of a concept of love and caring for our brothers and ours.
And I think there's this notion, that understanding just exactly what your top end is, and you don't really know until you push up against it and then push through it and get on the other side.
Exactly.
And this is, I think, a lot true in robotics and artificial intelligence. You don't really know until you get on the other side of failure. And it's just a really interesting sort of concept of bringing these very human things to technology.
Right.
So you finish your Navy SEAL career.
Yeah.
You go to Stanford Graduate School of Business.
Yep.
When you went to get your MBA, did you already know what you wanted to do on the outside, or were you in a discovery mode, or how was that?
I was fortunate during my time in service to reconnect with some undergrad friends of mine who were, serial entrepreneurs in the technology ecosystem. Mm-hmm. They were startup founders, in other words. And when they'd come down here and talk about the business that they were building, they helped me to observe that there was an opportunity to translate what I was working on in the military and use that not only culture and philosophy to working with startups in the Bay Area, but also with the upcoming challenges that we need for modernization across the military as well. And so that was really the idea hiding in plain sight for me at the moment. And so I became, like so many other things in my prior career, pretty obsessed about it. Like, how do I really find myself into this ecosystem? What are the best in the world building, and where are they at? Turns out the majority of those technologists at the time were domiciled and headquartered in Silicon Valley. And that's where the preponderance of venture capital is. It's where the preponderance of these large scale tech outcomes come from. So I felt like I should move up there to really get the boots on the ground truth. No different than deploying to an AO around the world. It's hard to do from a remote location. You got to get out there and really embrace the ecosystem to understand what's going on. So I moved up there, always with an eye towards national security or American dominance writ large. Yeah. I mean, as you can tell by virtue of my story, it's sort of a common thread across the things that I've done. And so it's something I'm very passionate about and gets me up out of bed every morning. And when I got there, I was surprised to see not many veterans, not many people looking at it from the angle that I was looking at it.
And we're talking 2016, 17?
15 to 17 was my MBA, which conveniently, there was an outlet. DIU was just getting started. It was DIUX, and it was going through a couple iterations there of trying to find its footing. Other innovation programs had not been started. There was the successful one out there, InQtel, that's been doing a great job for, at this point, 25 years here in 2025. So there was that. But there was also this groundswell of technology momentum that was starting to come together, but it was still far from a certain thing at the time. And even so, I think it was societally, somewhat shunned and pushed to the side in terms of the things that entrepreneurs and technologists wanted to work on.
I'm not sure if you're tracking, we acquired Crowd AI, and they were one of the OGs on the scene there in Silicon Valley, led by David Kiraj. Sort of same time frame. She had come across from Google and started a no-codes computer vision product. So we're now kind of in that 2018 timeframe.
Sure.
And what sort of made you say, okay, I've got to found Harpoon Ventures? And what was the entering argument for Harpoon Ventures? And why here in San Diego?
Yeah, there's a lot of arguments to go to. Broadly at the time, I saw that there was an opportunity to support our country through technology that wasn't being addressed to the level that I thought it should be. Okay. And that wasn't just my thinking. That was based on the investigative, diligence and pressure testing that I was doing. I was very fortunate to work at some of the top venture firms up there, the ones that really set the standard. Andreessen Horowitz continues to set the standard. Lightspeed continues to set the standard. And I had the opportunity to learn from some of the best in the business at both of those firms, to say nothing of our guest lecturers and adjuncts at Stanford themselves that have spent their entire career in life focusing on technology investing and building. But I always felt that if we're going to build the best in breed technology here in the United States, it's great that our enterprises and companies get access to that. But why doesn't Uncle Sam get access to that to support my teammates that I served with that go into harm's way? They should be the best equipped people in the entire world. And that didn't seem to be the case from a go-to-market standpoint. So I engaged on this journey to try and figure out why and how, and if there was a there. Ultimately, what I discovered, with the help of folks like InQtel and the work they did and the ground work that they set, is that most of these technology companies that were transforming the industry and the enterprise would ultimately transcend into government use cases as well. So this concept of dual use, which has gained popular sort of notoriety more recently, I'd say that most successful enterprise technology is actually dual use in nature. You look at CrowdStrike, UiPath, Splunk, these things that are SaaS companies or cybersecurity companies, they have very large go-to-market practices and budgets and revenue coming from Uncle Sam, whether that be the IC, the DoD, or other government departments and agencies. That doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. It's a very unique skill set. But my point is that most people saw these as traditional enterprise IT or enterprise companies. I saw as dual use companies based on the precedents of other companies throughout the history of Silicon Valley. But beyond that, I traveled around the country to meet with all the research labs, as many PEOs that would take a meeting with me, to go to the Pentagon. Anybody would take a meeting to just understand, where is technology going and how do you buy it? What are we looking for as a country to solve these problems? And it turned out that it was the majority of the things that we were investing in at the time at Lightspeed, not only on the software side, but also AI, also on the deep tech side with hardware and software enabled systems or AI enabled systems. There was definitively a pull and a desire to bring in these next generation companies and these non-traditionals, as the government likes to call it, the people that don't typically work with the government, to sort of embrace this innovation. And I'm like, hey, I see something here. There should be a firm that specializes at this intersection, which is surprisingly very, very, very broad. Yeah. Most people, I think, who at first pass look at me and my background in Harpoon, say, okay, this guy's a former Navy SEAL. He runs a defense tech venture firm. That's true in the broadest sense of the firm. Yeah. I actually think that American technology superiority is our national superiority. Yeah. It doesn't need to be something that's a torpedo or a rocket or a jet fighter. It can be, but I think there's so many enabling systems that go into those things to make them successful that it's really that broad underbelly of technology that is helping to enable all these other technologies to work more efficiently and better. Is really what we try to invest in. So it's a much broader mandate than I think most people might presume.
Man, that's really, really fascinating. So 2018, you launch Ventures, alone and unafraid, but backed by some heavyweights in the industry, correct?
Right. Yeah, we were very fortunate that went hat in hand to my former two employers and said, hey, I think there's a gap in the market and I would like to start this. Obviously, it was more well thought out than what I'm presenting here. And more rigorous. And fortunately, they opted in and supported us in this journey. And so since then, we went on to raise, a number of funds. We've raised $300 million in venture capital, LP dollars, which is investors into a venture capital fund. And we've invested in dozens of companies, and some are doing quite well.
And why did you choose the headquarter here in San Diego?
Very similar to the reason why we decided to launch Harpoon in the first place. It took a little bit of courage is the wrong word. I worked with guys that have tremendous courage, but a little bit of a practical bet to say, is this theme going to be important for the next number of decades in our country? I think that what's currently going on would suggest that, yes, it is very important for our country. And then if we're going to really do a good job of servicing the customers that we care the most about, the ones that are most authentic to me, we should probably co-locate in a region where there's customer centricity. And when you go through that list, you could be in DC, which is a great place. A lot of people are there. And I think you're really close to the flagpole. But if we wanted to have centricity to the customer from a West Coast standpoint, tight proximity to the technology ecosystem, which is primarily in Silicon Valley, but also more places more recently, San Diego is the obvious choice.
Yeah, and that's why we chose to put Skapa here on the map in San Diego. That closeness and that connectivity to the end user, we found that the strength is really getting that raw feedback from the end user. Great. Hey, that sucks. Why did you do that? What were you thinking? Yeah. And it just sort of accelerates capability at a pace that's relevant to the need right now. I think they're moving so fast here. And this San Diego ecosystem is just amazing. Like I said, I enjoy, bumping into you, at the park. And there's a bunch of other folks there in Coronado as well that are founders and CEOs of amazing companies.
I totally agree with that comment. When you see the most successful companies that we have today have this really tight feedback loop with the customers. And so why, as we as a venture firm, think any differently? If we're going to be very successful as a venture capital firm, we should sort of, for lack of a better term, embed or have close proximity so we get that feedback loop as well. We know what's coming next. We understand the problem sets deeply and innately. And that helps us to better diligence the companies that we're interested in investing in the first place.
Well, and another thing that you do particularly well, Larsen, is you convene the larger ecosystem and you host people at your awesome downtown office there right by Padres, by Petco Park. And and you build this sense of community. And so I just want to, thank you for that and sort of
thank you
cohering this community. You've been an OG in the space for a while now, so it's a very important
thank you
thing what you're doing. So let's go vertical on Harpoon itself. Sure. You just launched Black Flag.
We did.
Epic.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you tell us the thought behind that and what it is and what you hope to achieve with it?
I mean, you led into it with your prior question. I think that by virtue of the sector we're involved in, and by virtue of the mission that we have to ensure, the success of Western democracy and capitalism on a go-forward basis, I don't think that should be taken for granted right now, given the rise of authoritarian regimes and things that are not aligned with our Western values here. And so to your point of bringing community together, I think that that's something that we consciously embrace, that it's not just us versus you in business. It shouldn't be that way if we have a true mission, which is the red, white, and blue behind us. We got to find a way to have a rising tide raise all ships, because I do think it's that important. And so in terms of how we collaborate with other venture capital firms and other founders in the ecosystem, whether or not we invest together or we decide not to invest in a specific company, we really want these capabilities to be online, net of our involvement. And it's a big reason why we try to convene as much of the ecosystem as we possibly can. And we need help to do it. We can't be the only ones doing it, and we're not the only ones doing it. So Black Flag is an extension of that overarching philosophy, where we are at a crucible moment for our country. I really believe that in terms of our near peer threats around the world. We're at a crucible moment in the technology landscape with AI coming online, which is extremely important and could tip the balance for the decades and years to come. So we really want to make sure that we have as many people involved as possible with that. Enter the Black Flag concept, where now we're seeing more and more founders building for America. And that doesn't mean building, again, missile companies. It can be missile companies, but it can also be microelectronics companies. It can be energy companies to make sure that we have the power to power our data centers of the future. It can be biotechnology. We call it internally, we call it the freedom stack, which is like, maybe a little cliche, but I think it's the way we think about it. It's like, if we're going to ensure the prosperity of our country and enshrine our freedoms for future generations, I think it really does rest on the shoulders of these entrepreneurs that we're looking for to build in the technology domains of what we call the freedom stack. And so it's all of those that I just listed. And it's not just us as a firm and the founders. It's like, how do we bring in collaborative backers of this theme to work together towards that North Star of making sure the United States and our allies, I don't want to be remiss about mentioning our allies, are on the same footing to build for our future prosperity. And so that's what Black Flag was created for, is to support those new age founders that are thinking about an idea or have an idea and are launching something new. We want to support them with capital. Obviously, we're a venture capital firm, but we also want to support
How much capital are you talking about? It's not a drop in the bucket. It's a big
it's not a drop in the bucket. We manage $300 million. So, I mean, it's not nothing. And we're more than happy to have the preponderance of that go to the companies that are coming through this process. But another thing that I observed back during my time before starting Harpoon is most of these founders who are brilliant technologists don't know the hard lessons of navigating to support our country and support these customer sets in our government. And I think it's our patriotic duty to help support those companies in doing so. And so we help them navigate, getting your Sam Cage Dunn's registrations, things that are administrative in nature and don't sound cool, but you'd be shocked how many founders know how to build a next gen AI product, but have no idea how to service Uncle Sam or the compliance needs that you need to hit, the wickets you need to hit in order to do so, let alone the first customers you need to talk to, let alone if your company is well situated for an SBIR of all the various types, or well situated for a direct award, or how those two things can work together, let alone how to get to decision makers on the Hill to make sure they're aware of this coming capability, which can inform what our country buys in the future. All of those things are the things that we're trying to offer to the companies that come through this program, in addition to investment capital. And we're fortunate that we have some other mission-aligned partners, and more to be announced soon, to help us do this in the form of Shield Capital, in the form of InQtel, in the form of Palantir. And we're going to be announcing more soon that are going to be helping us in this initiative, because we do think that it's a whole of industry, it's a whole of nation approach, and a whole of allied nation approach to make sure that we are doing things correctly to secure our sovereignty and our future moving forward.
Yeah, that's so inspiring, Larsen, that you, like I said, you thought of the idea, you brought it together.
Well, I appreciate that. I actually have a team that like deserves all the credit. They said, what if we do this? And I'm like, actually, this is really a smart way to do this. But I think it's based on sort of like our overarching ethos of making sure that it's not just us, it's we. Yeah. And we sort of embrace that mentality. And I think it's something that should happen more. And we're trying to make sure that that's the case.
Well, and it's it's a community that we're deeply involved with here at Saab and Skapa, because we also have the same value where we want the convergence of the capability to create a new capability for our end users that can help them win, or deter if necessary. So it's just fascinating, and then one of your portfolio companies, you're also a founder of. Did you want to talk about that?
I'm happy to talk about it. And it's uncustomary. Yeah. Some people have done this throughout other venture funds where they see a problem in the world and they want to help solve it. And so one of those companies, or the only company that I'm a co-founder of beyond my venture capital firm, is a company called Vector. And that is essentially capability as a service, as we were discussing earlier. If you look around the world, the technology landscape has fundamentally changed. There is newer and newer tactical level capability that's coming to the battlefield, whether we like it or not. We're seeing it in Ukraine. We're seeing it in Israel. And frankly, I think that we're caught a little bit flat-footed as a country in terms of embracing this capability at the tactical edge. And so what if there's a company out there that actually owned and operated these capabilities as a service? Maybe we'll build some of our own, maybe we'll partner with others, but that's ultimately the vision of what this company is to do. So they recently came out of stealth. I am a co-founder of the business and very proud one to work with, Maddie, Andy, and George, brilliant guys who are on a righteous mission to help deter conflict and prosecute it if and when called upon.
Yeah, interesting. When I was at Task Force 59, we didn't actually own any of the kit. We had capability as a service. We actually owned the data, so we had data as a service.
Were you one of the first to do this at any sort of how hard was that for you guys to do?
Yeah, it was upwind a lot of the way, but it was so nice because there were some unintended consequences that were very favorable to us. We got the latest technology today. We got iterations on that technology as they came online. And we got the intimacy with, we were the end users, but we were given the producers the feedback in real time.
Yeah.
And so we were seeing, software changes in hours, hardware changes in weeks. So it was a really
very different than the traditional acquisition processes that you probably also have experience with as well.
Yeah. So it was I would say one of the special secret sauces of the success of Task Force 59. So, Larsen, very sort of compelling story up to this point, right? To 2025. If you could, for our audience, paint a picture as you would like to create it of the future, whether that's next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now. How is the future as you envision it, or you would like to create it? Yeah. This is the Skapa Podcast, Creating the Future, and we wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think on a more positive note, I think the future is abundant. I think that we have economic and success and peace in our near future. I think we have to earn it, though. I don't think this is something that, like all of us who have served in the military, that's what we all hope for, but we're standing by and ready if and when called upon. I think that we have that. I think we're entering an age of abundance with abundant energy, which raises more and more people out of poverty, rises the standard of living. I think we have that in our country. I think that's right around the corner with lots of next generation energy that's coming online. I think we have an age of abundance that's coming through the use of AI that's redefining industries at breakneck speed. But I also think it has the opportunity to rise more people from the lower class and the upper middle class and beyond. So I think all of these things are coming, and I'm very optimistic about that and very confident in it. That said, I think that we also have adversaries that would, potentially weaponize this capability to do us harm. And we need to be cognizant that there are those kinds of challenges out there. And so it's also our duty to defend against that. So specific to how we can do that militarily or through the Department of Defense, everyone is talking now about large scale mass attritable systems. In other words, for the listeners that maybe don't spend as much time as we do on this, it's going from more exquisite, billion-dollar aircraft, which there are some are stealth bombers, down to a much more fragmented aperture of dozens or hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of these things at a similar price point. That is, I think, coming as well. But I also disagree that this is going to happen overnight. What's really encouraging to me about ride sharing in the United States, and I'll get to the point of how that impacts the battlefield, Waymo is capturing market share and is overtaking Lyft and Uber on the streets of San Francisco and other cities around the country. Like autonomy is here to provide a singular example. It's not something that's still 10 years away. It is happening. It is taking market share from traditional ride sharing. But inherently, when you start thinking about autonomous capabilities in a denied environment, meaning where we have a near peer adversary who's actively trying to disrupt the use of those capabilities and interfere with our use of them and provide theirs offensively against us, things change. And we really need to tighten our OODA loop and really start thinking about our tech feedback cycles, our doctrine feedback cycles, our capability feedback cycles to stay on that front edge. So a lot of people are optimistic that is going to be the next era of deterrence for us, to going through the various offsets that we had, whether that be the nuclear offset, precision strike offset, now into autonomy potentially being and AI being the third offset. I think it's something that is cresting and coming, but I don't think we've solved for all of the use cases and how this architecture is going to work in denied areas as well. And beyond that, what's the doctrine for its use? Yeah. When do we employ it? When do we employ people? How do we employ machines? How do we employ people? How do we deploy them together? This is a very complicated topic, and I don't think it's something we have solved, but it takes smart people and a whole of nation and a whole of Western civilization to try and solve this. And that's something that I think that the American spirit is uniquely situated to do.
Yeah. And so I would say you're optimistic, right?
I am.
So what is generating that optimism in your point of view? I mean, we've just talked about this. You've been in the service since 2009, but in the industry since 2018. What is sort of giving you that sense that this could and will be possible?
I think that it's the people at the end of the day. I think it's the culture that I'm seeing going on right now. I think it's the ingenuity of people who are signing up to solve really hard problems. It reminds me of the people that I signed up to serve in the military with. People went into the military, and people go into the military definitionally willing to sacrifice it all for the greater good of our country. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't join with that in the back of their mind. I think that is transcending into the entrepreneurial spirit right now, where people are signing up to solve really hard technical problems for our country, which can be in aerospace and defense and in warfighting capability. Yeah. That can be in terms of a more prosperous future for our country in terms of energy dominance and purveying of that, or AI. I think that there is this surge of people who are trying to solve really hard problems right now that I haven't seen in my lifetime across society. And if we do that, I feel like we are in the midst of a modern reincarnation of our country in a very positive way, where we have not only the greats from before, the Einsteins, the Teslas, the Fords. I think we're gonna have a whole nother generation of that who brought us into a period of prosperity in our country. And I think that's something that's uniquely American that I'm really excited about seeing play out.
Yeah, Larsen, you really sparked something in me as you were talking, this notion of creativity and the humans. And, I just gave you a tour of the Skapa headquarters here.
Which inspires me. We got to step up our office.
But the most important piece of technology for us is that whiteboard over in the other room, where you get these very, very smart people, operators, professors, technologists swarming on a problem, and then going to that whiteboard and then creating a novel solution to that problem, and then getting it in the hands of the end users as quickly as fastly as possible, so we could get that feedback on it.
A lot of people think that our job as venture capitalists is to forecast where the world is going And I actually don't think that's the case at all, at least in my perspective.
Yeah.
Some people probably do that very, very well in our industry. I tend to think it's just having an open mind and open ears to listen to what the truly brilliant people, the founders and entrepreneurs, what their vision of the future is. And if we're going to do a good job at our job is to bet on those kinds of people, to engage in an audacious view of the future that we're convinced that it's possible and they can pull it off. And so for us, I don't think that we have this view very specifically of technology trends, although we see some writing on the wall with certain things. We really think our job is to be responsive and to invest in and support the brilliant people of our future. And I think we've been fortunate to do that thus far. And so our mandate is to do that going forward. And so but it's not just us. It does take, as I mentioned, a whole of community.
Well, Larsen, I want to thank you for finishing on that note. This is the Skapa Podcast, Creating the Future. You shared a very bright and bold vision of the future, but all of our guests are people that actually can deliver it and have delivered it. You're an American badass, really. And we were really happy to have you.
I was fortunate to work with some American badasses.
Yeah. So we're really happy that you joined us for the podcast. For our viewers, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, and this will also be on YouTube as well. Thanks again for your time, Larsen.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for your leadership.
Appreciate you very much.
Thanks.